Okay, stop having so much fun.
You need your teacher voice.
Okay, does it need to be louder? Do I need to be the voice of a deity to get the name? Let's see. I don't know if we can do much about this right now. But anyway, welcome to the August edition of Ecophilia. We are so happy to see so many people here, so many new faces, to see this wonderful contingent from the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. Give it up. These are three curators who are coming over here. We're hoping to hit them all up for programs in the future, you know, because that is what we do. Anyway, we've got lots going on. If you noticed in your email that went out to you, we have to talk to Marcel about the music, don't we? Oh, Marcel. Oh, Marcel. Marcel, this is a deity to be named. But I wanted to throw out, we have in September, Don King of Epiphany Mushroom. We'll be talking about fungi and foraging. And in October, we have Rich Hill. Steve, which vineyard? Lalure. Rich Hill from Lalure Vineyard. We'll be talking about the history and science of winemaking. Will there be opportunities to taste? Will there be opportunities to taste his products? Because that would be the Ecophilia way. And November 12th, Matt Harmon, who's here in the back there, raise your hand, Matt, who's an instructional technology specialist at Cleveland State, is going to be talking about beyond detection, teaching in the age of AI. Sir. Okay.
I said, did you happen to mention to these folks from the museum that if they come, they have to do a program?
I didn't actually say it had to, but it's strongly suggested. Anyway, great to see so many people here. You know, we're doing our best to keep this tradition going, and we honor our dear friend, the late Dr. Peter Pesch, who is the chair emeritus of the Department of Astronomy at Fulbright University, and just an extraordinary mind and intellect. And this was one of his favorite groups, an eclectic group of biologists, of astronomers, of engineers, of physicians, of anthropologists, all sorts of folks who would gather together and have lively conversations about scientific topics, followed by lunch and a glass of wine. Now, in this iteration, Steve and Rich and I, Brady, the other folks at Dan Best, and Ann, we're all been behind trying to perpetuate this speakeasy concept of being here at Jolly's Pizza, where they can provide the alcoholic beverages as well as the pizza and the chicken fingers or whatever. Seems to be a good model, though if we grow this much more, we'll be looking for a new place. But anyway, this is all good. And again, we're perpetuating that amazing tradition that was established by Fulbright. Tonight, it's really cool, thanks really to Renee Baronka. And Renee, I think, owes us a program.
I gave one.
Renee from the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, who in fact invited Dr. Beaux Berkeley to attend one of our sessions. And at the end, we connected, Ann and Beaux connected, and she said, hey, I'd be happy to do the program. And so, like, you know, that's the equivalent of writing it in blood. And so here we are tonight. So Dr. Berkeley is a conservationist biologist with a particular interest in the reproductive physiology and endocrinology of large mammals, mainly elephants and rhinos. Born and raised in P Heights, and you all know P Heights. This would be Cleveland Heights, home of Travis and Jason Kelsey. Taylor Swift, right. She did a PhD in biology at Hiram College, her Master of Science in Veterinary Clinical Sciences at the Ohio State University, and her PhD in Evolutionary Biology and Restoration Ecology from Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. She's been fortunate to work worldwide as a technician and later professor, increasing our understanding of wildlife health and ecology. She's been an assistant professor at James Madison University and Otterbein University. And from 2021 to 2023, she was a Fulbright Scholar, visiting lecturer at Chinhoyi University of Technology in Zimbabwe. Currently, she's initiating a Great Lakes Microplastics initiative in wildlife surveillance network. This doesn't even scratch the surface of her resume. She has done so many cool things in so many aspects of both conservation and biology, but also deep dives into animal science. It's really kind of neat. And tonight, she's going to be talking to us about sex allocation in mammals, because we figured it was about time we had an R-rated ecofeminine. So tonight is my great pleasure to introduce a dear friend, Dr. Beaux.
Hey everybody, let me get settled. So I want to make this as informal as possible, so feel free to interrupt whenever you want. I want to tell you that I met Harvey about, I want to say 45 years ago, when I was 17, so it must have been even longer than that. And I was volunteering at the Clinton Museum of Natural History and taking care of wildlife. I took care of these little kestrels, and I took care of Buzzy the baby beaver, and Carl was there with Martha the eagle, and it changed my life. Having this kind of experience changed my life. So I really owe you a lot, and so it's kind of on the full circle. My mom also worked at the museum as a volunteer. She helped Harvey catch red-tailed hawks, and she was the first person to find the peregrine falcons at the Standard Oil building. So she's also been a long time volunteer at the museum, but she didn't make it today. So I'm going to talk about my favorite subject, which is sex. And I come from it from a number of different perspectives. I do a lot of remote monitoring of reproductive hormones through urine and feces and blood and whatever else I can get my hands on. I do wildlife immunocontraception, so wild horses and deer and a lot of zoo animals. And I've also done in vitro fertilization. I find sex endlessly fascinating, and just from a scientific level, not from the whole other systems of love and everything else. But this has kept me occupied for a long time. So I'm going to talk about some work that was my PhD research and some outgrowths from that. And I'll start off. I also been doing some nutritional ecology in our elephants because I couldn't get access to rhinos. So I have that going on as well in South Africa. But I want to start out talking about basic sex differences. And if you recall from whatever level of biology, females are born with all their eggs. And there's a selection process that occurs through a woman's life, through a female's life, to get better and better eggs. But the thing that's fascinating to me about this is that these eggs are dating from when you're born. These are privileged cells that stay in a privileged space where no environmental contaminants can reach them, no stress. They're just sitting there waiting to be activated. And by the time you hit puberty, you have 300 to 500,000, so orders of magnitude less. They start to decrease to about 25,000 at 37, and that's when your fertility starts to really decline. By menopause, you're left with 1,000. So you're going from 10 million during gestation down to 1,000. So there's something about the selection of them that's a very powerful process. You ovulate, about 10 to 20 eggs are recruited each menstrual cycle. 1 to 3 of them will ovulate, and then over your lifespan, you only ovulate about 400 to 500 eggs. And I've always thought this is so strange that we have the selection going on in contrast to men, who are basically sperm manufacturers. And all they do, they crank out sperm every minute of every day. And they're producing 100 to 300 million sperm a day, which is about an ejaculate. So do with that what you will. There's about 1,000 to 1,500 sperm produced every single second. I tell you, telling that to an undergrad biology class is a lot of fun. So, the sperm cycle, so these are time constrained cells. The egg is just sitting there waiting for years and years and years. Sperm are just being turned over constantly. So they are much more uh, reactive to their environment. And production does not stop, it's constantly being turned over and over and over. So a lot of times when people are struggling to get pregnant, I say just relax because you got to reduce your stress. If you're trying to get pregnant, you're increasing your cortisol and you're damaging these fragile cells. And the sperm is basically, it's an engine, the mitochondria, uh, storage for the DNA, for the genetic information, and it's all together there. So once the sperm is ejaculated into the reproductive tract, again, there's like 300 million in a typical ejaculate. Again, this is where the selection of the sperm happens. So only about a tenth, 100th of that crosses the cervical barrier. Only about 100,000 are in the uterus. So along with the sperm, there's the seminal fluid, which contains hormones and nutrients to help stimulate not only the sperm progression, but the female to get prepared for fertilization. 10,000 get through into the correct fallopian tube. I don't know where that rest can go to get absorbed. 200 try to enter the egg, but only one actually enters the egg. So that's how the male selection occurs. So I'm just going to put this in as an aside. There's also selection post fertilization. And there's something about the female that's selecting embryo quality. Oops, I put egg there, not embryo. So fertility starts to decline, and there's an increase in abortion. So again, the female is selecting the quality of the resulting embryo, the resulting offspring. And they entranced me because I always thought it was just this random sperm hits the egg, it's X or Y, that's how the male and female comes along. But it's not. There's other control that's going on, and that's what sex allocation is all about. Why do I care about sex allocation? I work a lot with zoo animals, and if you ask any zoo people, or any zoo people in the room, you'll see that we always have too many males around. You see a lot of bachelor birds, a lot of if you look at the surplus list on the SSBs, there's always like maybe to take the male, gorilla, male, whatever. And the reason for that is females are the limiting factor in population growth. Like in rhinos, a female can have a calf every 4.5 years. A male, he can produce as many offspring as he can have access to females. So in polygynous mammals that control, where the male controls access to a certain number of females, he can get 5, like in rhinos, maybe 5 to 8 per year. So no matter how many males you have, it's dependent on the number of females. So as an egg zookeeper, I want to produce more females. So how can I use sex allocation theory to do that? Oh yeah, here's the data for rhinos in captivity. It's old data now, but it's still about true. That we have 61% males in the population, and we'd rather have 80% females. So why are birth ratios, or why are ratios equal across a population's lifetime. Fisher predicts that parental expenditure on both sexes should be equal. So birth sex ratios should always be 1:1. So one male for every female. That's how we say the ratio. Fisher was also, he went on to work more on statistics. He founded ANOVAs. He designed that statistical thing. He did a lot of work on population genetics. But here's my transition of failing one. So he talks about equal parental investment, and in the 70s, Trivers and Willard came up with differential parental investment. And what they said is that a female's physiology adjusts in response to the environment to produce the sex of offspring that has the greatest chance to reproduce. And this is in socially polygynous mammals. So what they're saying is there's something about a female that can adjust her uterine conditions or adjust her physiology to bias the sex of the offspring that's made. A few years later, Anne Clark came out with another idea, which is the local resource competition hypothesis. And she says that mothers in species where one sex stays home, where they're philopatric, or they're maintaining a specific territory, and they compete for food or territory with their same-sex peers, they will skew their offspring sex toward the dispersing sex to reduce future competition. So we see that there's ways that there's reasons for why we want to bias our sex. So my PhD research under the supervision of Wayne Linklater looked at whether we could take advantage of the Trivers-Willard hypothesis to manipulate sex ratios. And just to remind you of this again, if you see as a female increases quality, she'll produce a better quality male. And as she increases quality, she'll produce a better quality female. Again, the male will produce as many, or produce as many males or offspring as he has access to. The females will be able to do that as well, but not as great a level as the males. So Trivers and Willard are saying that a female in good body condition will want to produce a male. So she'll have the biggest bang for her investment in her offspring. Any questions on that? Yeah. I will get back to that. Okay. That's a great alternative. Yes. Okay. So let's go back to the female's quality again. So in a hypothetical mammal, you can score body condition from 0 to 5, where 3 is the average. And you see as an animal increases body condition, she has more nutrients available to support a pregnancy, so she's more likely to need to give birth. Typically, we don't see in the wild elevated body conditions like obesity or even overweight, and because those don't have access to that much nutrition. So we can see that basically around 2 or 3 they'll be ovulating, and if they're not in good body condition, they won't reproduce at all because they don't have any resources towards reproduction. So Wayne looked at
As you're talking, it sounds like there are conscious decisions as opposed to physiological things that cause changes.
I apologize for that.
Okay.
So So they're responding to their environment. There's cues in the environment that are telling them to either increase or store more food or not store more food.
So the body makes these decisions.
Yes.
Physiologically.
Yeah. So so in mares, so when you looked at the wild horses in New Zealand, the Chinhoyi range, and found that mares with better body condition gave birth to more males. So as he and his wife Alyssa wandered around the range for 3 years, every time they saw a wild horse, they'd score the body condition. And what they found was when they looked back at the data, they'd see the foal, they'd count back the number of gestation days, figure out when the foal was conceived, and look at what they scored the body condition in time. And what they found was females with low body condition produced about 23% of males. Females with average or higher body condition produced 60-some%, and these were significantly different. And there's a dramatic increase in this change between 2 and 3. Huh? I'll get to that. So Wayne thought about this for a bit, and again, he's thinking, well, how does a mare predict that she's at the time of conception, whether it's better to invest in a male or female offspring? So then what he did is he went back 6 weeks before conception. Mare's estrous cycle is about 21 days. So he thought, well, if she's thinking what's the best way to get the best reproductive fitness, I'm going to invest in either male or female, or not all conditions are bad. And so he went and looked at the 6 weeks before and looked at their body condition. But what he found was during those 6 weeks, if they lost body condition, they produced 4% males. If they maintained body condition, they produced 40% something. If they increased body condition, they produced 83% males. So there's some cue that's going on for the female body to make a decision on what they're going to invest in. Yeah. No, please.
But it feels like if there's more male wild, there's more males now, they should be better presenting.
So there are possible alternate explanations. What I'm interested in is the physiological aspect of this rather than the social. But I'll talk about it some in humans with the social explanations on. Because everybody loves to talk about this stuff, and there's all this amounts of hypotheses that you can come up with, and I'm sure you guys have some others. Yeah.
Okay.
So my hypothesis, what I wanted to do, whoops. Yeah, whoops. No, it's whatever percent for the whole population. Yes. Yeah. So to summarize so far, what I was looking at was females in increasing body condition will produce more male offspring, and females, and then I hypothesized that females in increasing body condition will have more glucose, because we all know as we eat more, our ACH levels go up, and we have more circulating glucose, and we eventually store as fat. So therefore, I wanted to see more nutrition produces more glucose, produces more females. Less nutrition produces less glucose, produces more females. So I wanted to look at this in rhinos, and getting to glucose levels in rhinos is a bit of a problem. So I thought, well, what can I use as a proxy? Well, what's the evidence for glucose levels in rhinos? We know that translocation or putting a rhino in a crate increases the stress levels dramatically, and that leads to taking glucose forward and putting them in the bloodstream. So that increases circulating glucose levels. Wayne looked at translocation. When rhinos were translocated from one part to another in Africa, and if some of them produced calves, he then looked at what time during their gestation they were removed, and he found the ones that earlier in gestation had more milk calves formed. So in this case, stress equals higher glucose equals more milk calves. Again, I couldn't access rhinos to feed them directly, so I used environmental quality as a proxy. So this is a herd level rather than an individual level experiment. And I looked at black rhinos in Chinhoyi and Pelosi in South Africa. So every time a ranger saw a rhino, he would score its body condition. If he saw a new calf, he would estimate the birth date based on the size of the calf. And by that way, I could look at when calves were conceived in rainy conditions and dry conditions. And what I found was, sure enough, during rainy seasons, more male calves were conceived than during dry seasons. So I was really excited about that because I want to go back and do something about these captive rhinos. And I'm saying we're feeding rhinos like it's rainy season all the time. So that was in 2011. I put this away and went on to other things. And one problem I was never able to solve was how I had one veterinarian in Australia reduce the amount of food he was giving a female white rhino that he wanted to breed. And sure enough, she gave birth to a female calf. So that's my whole experiment. Yeah, but I still believe in this. And when I was getting ready for this talk, I saw that the new study just came out a few months ago that looked at weights in captive versus wild rhinos. So the wild rhino weights are here for the three different species: white rhino, black rhino, greater Asian one-horn, and the black dots are the weights of captive rhinos. And so it sure looks like we're overfeeding our females, which again could lead theoretically to more male calves. So I got to get with these people and the birth data and conception data to this. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to humans. If you're interested in this sex allocation stuff, there's thousands of papers on it. There's primates, there's livestock, there's just about everything. But I'm sure you guys are all interested in what goes on with humans. So in humans, the normal birth sex ratio is 1.03 to 1.06. So there's a little bit of an excess of males at birth. Why do you think we would have a bias to males at birth? Because they don't survive. Yes. Why don't they survive? Because they take them. Yes. So they report. Yeah, so males are more risky. So we fewer males survive to adulthood than females. And you see that the once that effect starts, it gets exaggerated throughout the lifespan. So by the time you're hitting senior age, there's a lot more females than males. So there might be some sort of selection going on there, but does it meet the conditions of the Trivers-Willard hypothesis? So are humans polygynous? I'm looking here. I'm here. You guys think. Okay, so I'm going to say yes. In 185 culture study, there was 79% practice some form of polygamy. Western civilizations are the ones that mostly practice monogamy. And if you think about it, how long do we actually practice that? So that's yes. So are humans polygynous? I mean, sorry, whoops. Are humans sexually dimorphic? Yes? Okay. So humans, males are 10 to 15% greater than females. But that for primates, that's not as great as difference as it's seen in other primates. And I don't know the exact number. I Okay, so they made these two conditions. But what do we see in humans? So we're going to look at diet and the environment. And what we see is there was a huge study done on nurses, similar to the Framingham nurse study, but this is in the UK. It was, I think, 9,000 nurses found that when they reported what they ate, if they had a higher maternal diet at the time of conception, so they were eating excess calories, they produced 56% males versus if they were doing a maintaining diet or steady diet, so 45% males. If they ate breakfast, they got even more males. And I don't know what the mechanism is there.
Glucose.
Well, see, I was thinking glucose too, but if you're having a typical English breakfast, I don't know how much glucose like in here. I don't know.
It's pretty- Much of your food is converted.
What? I don't know.
So I think WHO are that data on refugees for regular population.
You're right. I'm trying to think of the study. I haven't seen any studies on refugee things. But that's a great idea. So I looked at, I was interested in looking at environmental effects. And if you look at what's going on in the environment, during times of great lack of access to food, like during the Spanish flu or the Great Depression, the number of males decreased. There's also environmental contaminant effects. So during the Bhopal disaster, when the fluoride something was released, people 100 kilometers around produced more female offspring for the next 5 years. And then during the Iraq War, there was a drastic decrease in the number of males. And what they hypothesized is that the stress of the war led to more spontaneous abortions of male fetuses. You can think of that's because males are 10 to 15% bigger, so they require more nutrition to maintain. So they lose. Yep.
Is it possible to think about the survival of those who will be remain species? So by increasing the male numbers, we have more like and also so by your first slide, 10 males, 10 males, 10 males, 16 males, and 8. So we increase the fetal of the mechanisms.
Yeah, and I think that's okay when we talk about captive wildlife, but who's going to do the sex selection? We don't know. Okay, but that leads to another topic, which is birth rates in general, which are dramatically higher. So, okay, now I want to talk a bit about the mechanism. There's not a lot known. In fact, I last looked at this in probably 2012. There's nothing new really known in this, and it's driving me nuts because this is the kind of stuff we spent years thinking about. And I'm like, why didn't you pick up on this? We could be selecting our babies. I already fantasized about being on Oprah with my token baby diet book, and I'm like, we can do this. This is a problem that's solvable. So we know that there's differential expression of genes in male versus female blastocysts. So before the after the embryo starts dividing and it expands, these guys cut the embryo in half. They use half to look at the genome, half to look at the transcriptome, so the RNA, and they found that there's clear differences in female genomics or gene expression versus males, and in the RNA expression of male versus females. So we know this is going on, but we don't know how to manipulate it. Gutierra Sedan and Perez Cristo looked at blastocyst, bovine blastocysts, and altered them in different levels of glucose and found that higher glucose levels produce significantly greater, I think it's like 80-90% more male blastocysts. And what they're thinking there is their hypothesis was there's X chromosome inactivation. So there's in female embryos, there'll be 2 copies of the X chromosome, and they're both going on expressing genes for a certain number of time, and then they turn on for different ages depending on the species. So what they're thinking is that the female embryos were essentially expressing glucose 6 dehydrogenase, I think is the enzyme, and 2 copies at a time. So the females were poisoning themselves out of existence. And that's the best mechanism we've come up with so far. So that's my answer to this mechanism. They were doing it in vitro, so they were putting them in media that had higher levels of glucose. Okay, so that's all I have. And I'm gonna open it up for any questions, and I have one more. There's like I said, there's lots of theories about what's controlling sex allocation. This is a new one that came out called the expensive son hypothesis. And this is the idea that where males are larger than females, they take in more food and energy to grow. So females who have many sons face higher physical costs and lower future survival due to success. So that may be the reason why you want to produce more female offspring. So there's a bunch of competing theories, and we're still working on this. Yep. I was going to say words about and so this now every day which is sort of possibly I think maybe no, but that's a great idea. Because we do see that same polycystic ovarian syndrome in rhinos and lots of captive animals. And we are all living the same, we all evolve a common. Right, and it's something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, how that
So, I used to work in Florida looking at, endocrine disruption on fish and alligators in a lake called Lake Apopka, which had a lot of herbicide runoff from the microbes. And we found there were no fish younger than 6 years old. So they lost the ability to reproduce at all due to these environmental endocrine disruptors. And we saw a lot of intersex, hermaphrodites, and just malformed tissues overall, more tumors. So there's definitely an effect, and that's why I'm going to set up this wildlife surveillance network. And everything's really good.
So I'm pretty ignorant about this. My understanding is this is pH factor. So one of the female, not so many humans, typically pH is the sperm head first. It's going to be a factor.
Yeah. So I can't remember in which direction it goes, but remember I said there was like 300 million at the beginning. So that's one of the ways they select. Yep.
I heard many studies that looked at maybe children who experience like stroke.
I saw an abstract about that, which I didn't read, but it was about the Bhopal offspring and the reproductive consequences of that. We didn't talk about the male effect at all, but we see that that they were thinking that this Bhopal effect is coming through the sperm because men who were exposed to the chemical and then went to like lived further than 100 kilometers from the plant, their wives were also having female offspring. So there could be a selection going on there. Yeah.
And that lake is for the
Compared to like you're asking.
I can't remember that I have to pick my brain, but they were the herbicides that were being used in the orange groves. And it began with A.
That's supposed to make here what's
Yeah.
But this is the Ohio EPA study that published about 25 years ago that was estimating that in the summertime, 75% of water flowing through both streams of Ohio has came through a wastewater treatment facility. And so, we do a pretty good job at digesting bacteria and removing pathogens and things like that. We don't even look at chemicals.
No.
And so,
So
they're going, all sorts of things back through. It's great. I mean, like, I guess the Rhine or something, they use it like 8 times before the water gets to the, it's the ocean. Yeah, river system. Some river systems. Yeah. So what comes out of the plant's pretty important.
yeah, it does, and we don't measure it all. And every medication we take is coming out through our waste and through the waste treatment plants into the waters. And so microplastics, yeah. That's my next goal to tackle. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for all your questions, and this was fun.